You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Dynasty podcast, everybody. I am Kate Magdziuk. You could follow me on Twitter at FFBallblast. And as always, I am joined by Marcus Mosher. Follow him on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Give the show a follow. Hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your podcast. And I mean, you got to subscribe on the YouTubes where we are streaming live and posting our vids and all of that stuff to help you win your Dynasty leagues. And hopefully you either walked away with your championship or I don't know, maybe if your league extends into week 18 wrongfully, we can help you get one of those championships this week.
So I got a question for you, Kate. I won a Dynasty championship last week. Is it corny that I went to Trophy Smack and bought one of those big championship belts with my earnings?
No.
Okay.
It's a flex.
That's what I thought. I put all the names of all the previous champions on there. I just thought it'd be really cool to have one. So that's not a sponsor or anything for Trophy Smack, but we did see them at the Fantasy Football Expo. We love them. So why not support good people, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's a gift that keeps on giving. You will never regret. Although, like, I will say, I need like a more gender neutral prize, a more like, because I have to say, as a woman playing fantasy football, I think those belts are really like just not like stylish for women.
You're just saying
women
ugly.
cannot
Go ahead. You're saying ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a little ugly, but I get it. It's like the WWE, like
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. It's like SmackDown style. I get it.
So in the league that I play in, it's a lot of family members that live close to me. So like, I'm planning on just taking this belt wherever I go, like to the grocery store. I'm going to be just carrying it over my shoulder into the restaurants, into Applebee's. You're going to be seeing me wearing
like a bag of
belt.
Potatoes over your shoulder.
I can't wait. It's going to be so
I get
much
it.
fun.
But I am in a few like ladies only leagues. I'm just going to vote that maybe we get like a Prada belt and we get the name inscribed of every woman that wins the fantasy football league. There's something for, I'm sure Trophy Smack, you can have my idea. Get us a beautiful like a diamond, little diamond belt buckle or something like that. Let's get the ladies
there you go, Trophy
something.
Smack. There's some free ideas for you. All right, Kate, we're going to talk about week 18. Not a lot to talk about in terms of like matchups and all that kind of stuff because week 18 kind of sucks. Let's be honest, right? There's only a few games that matter. However, one of the games that does matter is the 49ers and the Rams. And a guy that we're going to see for the first time this season is Cam Akers. And my question for you, if Cam Akers comes out and looks fantastic, let's say he looks like the running back that we saw last year who was dominating at the end of the season, how much could his value in stock improve going into the 2022 offseason?
So that I feel like that question is kind of twofold, right? Because I think you have to wonder, what are your expectations in terms of workload for Cam Akers? Because obviously you have Sony Michel, who's done pretty well in that workhorse role while you've had Darrell Henderson injured. Like he's looked absolutely fine in that role. He's not struggling. But I get why you want to have him activated because you want to get him some touches. You want to get him back in the groove before you actually hit that postseason. So my question is really more, how much work are you actually expecting him to get? Because I could picture this as a situation where let's say, Cam Akers is activated, he plays some touches, but I still think Sony Michel could come out looking like the better running back here, just based on it. Like, this is purely speculative. It has nothing to do with Cam Akers' talent or anything like that. But just with, our sort of understanding of some of these major injuries, it can take athletes a minute to trust your heel again, to trust your knee after an ACL. Thoughts on that, first of all, before we get into true value?
So I agree with you. I just want him to not look bad, right? And you'll know, like if he looks like he's completely lost all of his athleticism, you'll know. What you want from him in this game is just to look fine. He doesn't need a bunch of touches. He doesn't need 20 touches in this game, but 7 to 8 touches where it's like, okay, he's back, because that will get you excited going into the next offseason. Kate, I want to talk about his value right now. So before the injury in July, according to Dynasty League Football, his ADP overall was 10. 10. He has the injury.
Overall?
10 overall. That's
Whew.
incredible, right? He
Yeah,
has the injury in
that's very high.
August. Yeah, it was high. Injury in August, it goes to 65.5. Then in September, it drops down to 93. October 79, November 60. We're back up to 58 now, Kate, and rising. He's currently RB15 in Dynasty. He's ahead of guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, AJ Dillon. Does that feel right, or does that still feel a little too high?
So I think it feels a little bit high, but I kind of get it because all of these guys that you just mentioned, if you want to talk about like talent, obviously they all have talent, but all of these guys have question marks, right? And Cam Akers, I think what you're betting on is just the improvement of overall medicine here, improvement of surgical techniques, rehab, and the fact that he is so young when this injury occurred, that he's got so much time. He's got the luxury of time for him to bounce back. I think that feels about right, but it's those guys just ahead of him that make me sort of like,
Well, let's talk
like,
about this. So
okay.
a guy that's one spot ahead of him who missed the entire season with an injury as well is J.K. Dobbins. Now, Dobbins tore his ACL a little closer to the season. He's obviously not returning. Do you like Dobbins or Akers better? Both guys having serious injuries.
I'll take Dobbins in that scenario just because we have a much larger sample size of those injuries and running backs returning from those injuries. We know he's on a good offense. We know he's on a prolific rushing offense. I think the talent level, I like J.K. Dobbins. I liked him better as a prospect coming out of college. So J.K. Dobbins gets that edge for me in terms of talent and injury risk. But like, what about a guy like Antonio Gibson,
Yeah, that's a
who
tough
I
one.
think is very much in a similar tier. We've seen lots of production from him, but I mean, Antonio Gibson has been an absolute roller coaster. There's so many questions about that organization, the offense. Antonio Gibson's still 23 years old, but despite his health, I guess I wouldn't say he's like overly healthy because I feel like we see him hobble off the field at least like 2 to 3 times a game. But um, despite the fact that he doesn't have one of these serious injuries like an Achilles, he still feels like he could be the riskier of those two assets. And at latest turn, Antonio Gibson is being drafted ahead of Cam Akers in dynasty leagues.
Do you know where Antonio Gibson finished in total points this year?
I don't.
11th. 11th. It was a
What a wild
really
ride.
weird year for Antonio Gibson, and he still finished as a borderline RB1. I would have a hard time not taking Antonio Gibson over Akers because at least we know even in a weird season he's still going to give you top 12 numbers. So it's a good one. Back to Akers. I just want to see him look competent this week, and then hopefully improve a little bit as we get into playoffs. And if the Rams make a run, let's say they get to the NFC Championship game and he has 3 or 4 games under his belt, I would feel great about drafting him, trading for him over this offseason. That's really all we're looking for in Week 18. Let's take a quick break, okay? And we're going to talk about some other guys we're excited to see here in Week 18. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. You guys know Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar, but in my opinion, even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it so easy to stick to your resolution because they taste so good, and you're going to want to eat them because they're good for you. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, with most Built Bars only containing 130 calories, but 17 grams of protein. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 for your next order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Ton of great flavors right now: coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and so many more. Built Bars are always coming up with more ideas. My favorite is coconut brownie chunk. Make sure you go check that
It's
out.
cookies and cream, Marcus.
Cookies and
Stop
cream
with
is
the
up
false
there.
advertising.
Yeah, cookies and cream is up there. It's not number one, but it's pretty close. Again, Built.com. One more thing we want to tell you about, and that is Get Upside. Our listeners are making up to 25 cents for every single gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code Touchdown and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store and use promo code Touchdown to get up to 50 cents per gallon cash back on your first tank. That is promo code Touchdown. All right, Kate, let's talk about some guys that we're excited to see this week. And let's start with James Washington of your Pittsburgh Steelers. So we should mention that Deontay Johnson tested positive for COVID on Thursday. It seems
That is
very
a huge
unlikely.
blow for the Steelers, by the way, who I feel like after Ben's exit at Heinz Field, everybody was like almost feeling hopeful, including the Steelers. That is like the biggest loss this team probably could have imagined at this point.
It's whatever. It's fine. They're not going to make the playoffs.
Deontay Johnson, top 10 wide receiver, Marcus.
Okay.
I will hear none
By
of
the
that
way,
slander.
I kind of think the Colts are going to lose to the Jaguars this week, and that the Ravens-Steeler game is going to basically decide who makes the playoffs. So I'm just pointing that out. Which wouldn't that be hilarious? That means more snaps for James Washington, who is going to be a free agent in about 4 days, right? Like his free agency is coming up. And I think, listen, I don't know about you. I think James Washington is good. I just think he's been in an offense that doesn't necessarily fit him particularly well. A quarterback who's not throwing the ball down the field nearly enough. I think James Washington could catch on somewhere and have some success. But I'm interested to see him this week.
I love this play, Marcus. I love the the overall interest here. But I really like James Washington. It's just like a low key buy. I know, especially as we sort of close out this season, there's a lot of question marks about, maybe some of these rookies that we didn't hear a lot from. But there could be a lot of these little hidden gems in terms of players that might be coming into a new situation that we need to look at from a veteran standpoint. Because James Washington, he is a big play, deep threat, like throw up the ball, let him make a contested catch. It's not like he's the tallest guy in the world, but he's so clutch in those situations. And he really has been paired with a quarterback that just hasn't had that same sort of deep ball. I'm very excited to see what James Washington can do, not just for this week, moving forward, but we've seen him come up pretty clutch in some situations. Hasn't exceeded 69 receiving yards yet this year, but in very limited playing time, has 2 scores. I think he could be a relatively kind of safe floor play this week, given the situation.
I just think he's somebody that could, on the right team, be a guy that we consider as a weekly flex option. Like, for instance, I don't think there's a huge difference in talents level between like Kendrick Bourne and James Washington, right? But Bourne went to a better situation with more targets this year in New England, and all of a sudden he's a top 32 receiver. Again, is the 30th receiver in fantasy super valuable? No, but at least it's somebody who gives you some flex appeal, right? I think you can get that in James Washington, and I think right now, if you look at some recent trades for him, Kate, you can get him for absolutely nothing. Let me give you some recent trades. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
James Washington in a super flex league for Geno Smith.
Yeah. Give me James Washington.
James Washington for Matt Breida.
Give me James Washington.
James Washington for KJ Osborne.
Ooh, that one's a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
I'd probably, ooh, oof.
It's close, but
That
like
one is like right down the middle for me.
James Washington for a 4th round dynasty pick in 2022.
James Washington.
And that's kind of the point, right? You can get James Washington basically for free right now, like just at the bottom of your roster asset. And he could turn into somebody that's a spot starter next year, depending on where he lands. Like if he lands in, I don't know, like Atlanta, like if he ends up going to there, I could see him having a lot of value. Or if he's the Michael Gallup replacement in Dallas, like I could see him having value there as well. I just think he's somebody that we should mention and watch out this week because I think whenever he plays, he's pretty good.
Yeah, and I do think like one other thing worth noting about just James Washington, if we could pick any situation that I could send him to, let's pretend that Aaron Rodgers isn't like the worst human and is not like has his foot halfway out the door, whatever that may be, like whatever that situation is. I would have loved to see James Washington play in this offense this season with Aaron Rodgers because I think like a guy like that could have really taken the top off of things and just been fantastic to watch. I think he's going to be a very interesting guy to watch moving forward.
I agree. All right, a couple more guys. Tyler Huntley. Looks like he's going to get the start again this week against the Steelers. Lamar Jackson continuing to deal with an ankle injury. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to say he's the most valuable handcuff at quarterback right now. I don't know if handcuffing a quarterback is really a thing, but I think Tyler Huntley has at least shown enough to, maybe garner some interest this offseason from a team, right? Like, it would not shock me if somebody offered the Ravens a 2nd-round pick for Huntley because he's played well enough in behind a bad offensive line with less than ideal situations. I just like watching Tyler Huntley play. I think he's a fun player.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a nice call. It's really hard to find some of these like fringe quarterbacks in like a super flex league. In addition to, like you're gonna hate this name, but like in addition to Tyler Huntley, another name to maybe watch in some of these super flex leagues is like a Mitch Trubisky, who's on a 1-year deal, going to be a free agent coming up, and has shown like some rushing upside, gets to sit, had finally a season under a competent head coach with a very talented quarterback ahead of him, got to sort of sit and watch that. He's another one of these quarterbacks that I think has like very low value right now, but could, find just some value for, a win now team as a solid depth piece moving to 2022.
I agree. I just think he's a pretty decent player. He's gone for at least 40 rushing yards in all 4 of his starts. Has passed for at least 195 yards in all 4 starts. I think he's a good player. Somebody to keep an eye on. All right, a deep sleeper, Kate. This one's really, really deep. And I would actually advise you picking up this player now. It's Tyree Jackson. So if you're not familiar with Tyree Jackson, he's a former quarterback who went to Buffalo, did not get drafted. The Eagles have turned him into a tight end, and I'm just going to read you some of his combine numbers. He is 6'7", 250 pounds, ran a 4.59 40 at the 40-yard dash with a 7-second flat 3-cone. This is a super freak athlete, and we saw him in the preseason and looked really, really good. We've seen these type of tight ends before, like have success. Like the most recent example being Logan Thomas, right, for Washington. Would not shock me at all if Tyree Jackson plays really well against Dallas. I don't think Dallas Goedert's going to play. And he starts, getting some momentum going into the 2022 offseason. So if you're in a tight end premium league, if you're in a league that really values tight ends, I think Tyree Jackson is an interesting play.
Hashtag very large human, very large. That's some impressive combine stats, given his size. But I mean, like some of these situations, especially when you just need a guy to maybe move the chains. We've seen before that even if you're not the best athlete, which he is pretty good, it's like the size mismatch can just give you so much upside there. Especially in those PPR leagues where you might see a bunch of those targets around the first down marker just to move the chains.
I agree. So just keep an eye on him. That's a Saturday night game. It'll be in a national spotlight game. So if he plays well, let's say he goes 5 for 50, which wouldn't be all that surprising. You're going to see his value basically just shoot up the board, right? He might go from tight end 40 right now to tight end 25. It would not shock me at all. All right, one more quick break to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Kate, the last thing that I wanted to mention to you before we head out is I wanted to talk about Calvin Ridley. So NFL Network Steve Weiss was talking on a podcast, I believe it was Wednesday, and saying he believes that Calvin Ridley could be looking for a fresh start in 2022 away from the Falcons. So in case you're not familiar, Ridley decided to walk away from the NFL for mental health reasons. I believe in October. He's only played in a few games this season. We've seen his dynasty value basically plummet. In October, he was 15 overall. Now he's down to like 55, 56 overall. My first question to you is, would you feel comfortable trading for Calvin Ridley this offseason? And number two, where would you like to see him land if the Falcons do trade him?
Yes, I am absolutely trading for Calvin Ridley. I think that the really interesting thing surrounding him is just the overall narrative that we can sort of predict this guy's mental health. Um, I think we've all been to the point where we've needed some mental health breaks. It doesn't mean we never return to our jobs again and never the amount of speculation here surrounding just Calvin Ridley and what his future might look like, I think has just been kind of silly because none of this has come from him. And we don't really have any credible sources. This is just all us speculating and continuing to drop his value. So hopefully he is resilient and makes a full comeback in the NFL. And but more importantly, hopefully he's resilient and just is a happy young man. But I just think sort of the way that this situation has transpired, it's kind of like when you're alone with your thoughts for a little bit and you can drive yourself a little crazy. I think that's what dynasty managers have been doing with Calvin Ridley.
I agree.
There's really nothing else you could do but hold him. This wasn't the time to trade him, but I am absolutely going to go ahead and acquire him wherever I can. Let's throw this out there. It's a new conference. What about the New England Patriots? They made a move to get Jonnu Smith, who hasn't been overly involved as a receiver. Hunter Henry has been much more clutch in that regard, but they don't have a ton of money invested in the wide receiver position. Calvin Ridley would step into that offense and instantly be a wide receiver one.
That's a good fit. What about the Raiders? The Raiders obviously lost Henry Ruggs after his the DUI. They released him. They're kind of searching for that deep threat, that number one outside receiver. I actually think he would make a lot of sense with Derek Carr. And we know how much the Raiders organization values former Alabama players. I think that would be interesting, right? I think the Falcons would also feel comfortable trading him away to an AFC opponent rather than an NFC opponent. I think that would make sense. Any other destinations that you could see?
So here, let me get your thoughts on why I would want to counter the Raiders here. Just given his current situation, do you think that the Raiders are just in a bit of a tumultuous situation at this point in terms of leadership? Like that would be my only question there, especially given that it sounds like what he's looking for is some stability and a fresh start. Um, I feel like the Raiders are just kind of in the thick of things in that regard.
They are, but they're also still in the playoff hunt, which is absolutely insane. It's just a
True.
crazy thing. It might depend a little bit on who's the head coach, right? Like if they get somebody who is well respected around the NFL. But let me give you a really good example, Kate. A guy that I know Calvin really loves a lot is his former coach, Dan Quinn, right? Who is now the Cowboys defensive coordinator. If Dan Quinn gets hired by the Raiders, I could see that being a spot that Calvin Ridley is all of a sudden, wants to go because, hey, this is a coach that I know and I love. It's a quarterback that
Mentor.
can give me the football, right? I think that would make a lot of sense. But I do agree with you. I think it's going to depend a little bit on how stable that organization is.
Let me give you one more. Like this might be actually my favorite fit, I think, in terms of um, like personnel and team needs. I do think that like New England, I think would be just my favorite position in terms of like overall team need and situation, and maybe what Calvin Ridley might, in terms of stability, in terms
Mhm.
of leadership. That's kind of where I'm going with New England. But how about the Cleveland Browns, who, we've seen, Odell Beckham make his way out. Jarvis Landry has been, like the most solid slot wide receiver in the NFL. But there's only so much you can do as the slot wide receiver. You need somebody there to take the top off. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been fine. Hasn't really dominated, hasn't commanded a larger target share. Anthony Schwartz has been like non-existent. What if you send Calvin Ridley to play alongside Jarvis Landry and kind of help out that passing attack? Because you already know the run game is solid. Um, Maybe the biggest issue there would be Baker Mayfield, but what do you
Yeah.
think of that fit?
Yeah, I think you nailed it though. The biggest issue is probably Baker, right? If he couldn't get Odell the ball, I just I really wonder if Baker and Calvin Ridley's games mesh well, right? Because Calvin is the guy that he had the highest average depth of target last year and this year before he left. That's not really Baker's game, and that's a run first offense. I get where it makes sense personnel wise, but I don't know if it meshes with each of those guys' skill sets.
That's fair.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in Calvin Ridley if he becomes available. Like I could see the Ravens being interested again. I could see teams that don't even necessarily have wide receiver needs, like the Chiefs. If you pair him with Tyreek Hill, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what that offense would look like. So if
Scary.
Calvin
Very
Ridley does
scary.
become, very scary. If Calvin Ridley does become available, you're going to see upwards of a dozen teams be interested in him. So Calvin, we're hoping that everything is as well. We can't wait to see you back on the field because he's just a lot of fun to watch. But that is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Continue to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We'll enjoy Week 18. Follow Kate at FF Ball Blast. Follow me at Marcus _Mosher.